This is the ERP Advisor.
The ERP Advisor's overview of IFS.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today. This summer, ERP Advisors Group is spotlighting the most prominent vendors in the ERP software market. Today, we will be discussing IFS and their offerings and providing key insights into our experiences working with them. Hi, Sean. Thank you for joining me today.
You bet.
Yeah. So I guess IFS is a large company, right?
Pretty big. Yeah.
So can you start us off by maybe talking to us about who they are and what they do? And yeah.
It's probably one of the largest ERP vendors that you may not know that much about.
Okay.
That's kind of IFS is an interesting company. It's out of Sweden, Scandinavia, and it's under $1 billion a year in revenue, but they're in like 50 countries.
Right.
So, the solution's been in existence for a long time, since about 1983, according to my cheat sheet. So, we're talking about 40 years. So it's been around for a really long time. But it's bigger kinds of software. They sort of target more of a maybe smaller end of tier one. Maybe it fits in just below an SAP, but definitely the larger size of tier two solutions for sure. So, it's industrial software. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but yeah, that's IFS.
Yeah. What type of software do they sell, and do they focus on certain industries, or do they work better in different industries?
Yeah, they're kind of an interesting firm in that I'm trying to think of who would be similar. Probably some of the maybe the Infor product. It's now called LN. But it's their software. IFS is more based around kind of enterprise asset management. So think about a company that has a lot of assets, like a power generation company, like they own utilities, not just the utility company, but they own like the generation facilities. So there's a lot of maintenance, repair, and operations, or MRO, that happens. So that's a big deal. There's a lot of field services management companies, field services that use IFS, as well as kind of core sort of ERP functionality. So that's why you get the heavy asset intensive industries. Again, think about, an organization has a ton of field services people out there, but they also do manufacturing. And interesting in the manufacturing space is that they do have a pretty big focus around process manufacturing as well, which is different than discrete. Discrete, of course, is making a specific thing, like a water bottle or a phone.
Right.
Whereas process is more chemicals, or even some kinds of foods, ingredients, and that type of thing. So when you think about IFS, that's usually where we tend to put them into, is sort of around kind of project-based field services, heavy asset, great equipment maintenance and tracking solutions, preventative maintenance. We got a lot of machines. Like, you really think about these great companies around the world, really, that have, lots of assets that need to be maintained and updated and scheduled. And IFS is really best for that kind of a solution.
Okay. Well, can you talk a little bit about the prominent features of this particular platform?
Yeah. I mean, I just kind of touching on some of them even. Sorry about that. Let me put that back. Doggy just ran by. But enterprise asset management. So when you think about sort of asset management, it's not like just depreciation, right? The financial side handles depreciation really well. But this is things like, again, maintenance schedules, work orders, preventative maintenance, vehicle sort of information management. Like, you think about a lot of assets, and you have a lot of stuff you got to track about them, usage to a specific project, right? They're super good in that enterprise asset management space. Also, like I said, field services, Definitely kind of project-based manufacturing, batch process manufacturing, all the kind of manufacturing stuff that's out there. And even a lot of project stuff too, right? There's some, kind of good job and project costing that that would be needed, as well as even, environmental health and safety and some of the HR stuff that an organization that has a lot of assets would need. IFS actually has those solutions as well. So it's definitely a full breadth of software. Like we have a client right now, or it's a prospect that we're talking to that uses IFS just for field services. And one of the options for them is to roll out IFS across the whole organization for accounting and some manufacturing stuff that they're doing. So IFS can do that kind of stuff.
Right.
But,
Right.
but if you think about, like, on the opposite side would be like a Workday, right? Where IFS is more about the machines, the accounting, the projects, the maintenance, like all this stuff, right? But they do have HR payroll, and they do have expense management, recruiting, and some of those other functions. But the Workday solution is more targeted towards like a knowledge worker business, right? And there's others for sure, but whereas IFS is more around, again, heavy capital intensive businesses.
Right. Can the software be customizable to fit an organization's needs, or is it kind of you buy the package and you get what you get and use what you need kind of thing?
Yeah, it can be customized. And that's, almost any software solution can be customized. I mean, even QuickBooks can a little bit. So IFS does have a pretty good development platform as well. So if you need to build stuff out, you can. Now, IFS has spent a lot of effort in the last couple of years really getting their cloud strategy really dialed in. And they're moving towards the kind of a public cloud solution, having the solutions up in some of the bigger data center systems and that. And with that kind of a new platform does come kind of this configuration methodology. What's the best way to customize and what's not? So IFS implementations traditionally are pretty big. Like they're not as big as maybe some of the bigger tier ones, but they're right underneath that because there is so much configuration customization that goes into that solution for sure.
Can you speak to their ownership structure and then what kind of partner ecosystem that they have?
Yeah, I could definitely do that. Interestingly enough, as a Swedish-based organization, IFS is owned by a private equity firm called EQT. And that's interesting because that organization, I think I researched this at one point, is owned, or it's the private equity arm of some Swedish families that have been around for a long time. So there you go, right? And that family, that firm or fund, or I guess there's multiple funds that EQT has, and I'm sure there's more than just that investor, but that organization EQT also has taken another ERP under its wing called Acumatica. So
interesting.
EQT owns both IFS and Acumatica. It's very interesting. Yeah, but those two applications play so differently, they never are going to overlap. So they're like two different solutions. But recently EQT sold a minority interest to a firm called HG, which is another private equity firm. I'm not sure where HG is out of, actually. That's interesting. But when HG put in that investment, we don't know how much. We just know they became a significant minority investor. The value that was put on IFS, and they actually have another business called WorkWave that is more specific to field services that are kind of solutions together. But the value that was the market cap, or the market value, I should say, was put on that business was $10 billion.
Oh, wow.
So, even though you've maybe never heard of IFS before, it's just organizations worth $10 billion. They got a lot of customers. They got a lot of people in the space that are using their solutions, 10,000 customers, 4,500 employees in 50 countries. They've got good revenue, and they're private equity backed by a pretty strong firm. I mean, we've watched EQT as it relates to IFS as well as Acumatica. They seem to be like a long-term player. Again, they sold just a little piece of their equity, it sounds like, to HG, who also seems to be kind of a long-term player. HG has some other businesses. There's a a financial planning and analysis tool or corporate performance management tool called Profix. HG has I think they actually own all of Profix. So, these guys plan software also, EQTs and Acumatica, like it all makes sense. There's many other solutions too, like Insight software that HG has and some other stuff. So, it's a good story is what I'm trying to say. But IFS's presence isn't as much in the US as it is globally. So
that's what I was going to ask you. Yeah. Well, I was just going to ask you, are they more, since they're based out of Sweden, are they more, maybe they work more with European companies and they're just like slowly being more known here in the States? Is that right or no?
I think that's right. That's what I'm observing. Again, anybody out there that's listening to this that has a different opinion needs to tell us for sure. But that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm seeing two things that support that. One is that IFS is investing in their salespeople. A lot more North American-based salespeople, and they're good people that have good ERP experience, and they're nice to talk to. I love that. It's so nice to have nice salespeople.
Right.
So that's one thing, but also their partner channel. I think they're increasing their partner channel in North America. There's some great partners. We work with one today that's really, really good. And so, that investment in the partner channel is really like, that tells us a lot, right? Because you have companies, Enterprise Consulting, it's called. I think they're the North America's first IFS Platinum partner. We work with them when we want to bring in IFS. We work with IFS directly too. So, I think we're going to see more IFS come up because it's also a nice alternative to definitely SAP, right? That's who really competes in the spaces that they operate in the most. And it is lower cost. They're getting their cloud strategy set, nice viability, long-term roadmap stuff, all that kind of stuff.
Right. Well, from your experience of working with IFS, can you talk to why they win over their competitors?
That's a great question. They really do have this heavy capital intensive kind of micro vertical, right? Whether it's manufacturing or mining or, big energy companies, whatever. They've got, or maybe not the biggest energy companies, but that next level down. They have a cost-effective solution that's going to be easier to deploy than the tier ones, but it's much more deep in those areas than, say, a NetSuite or even an Acumatica or a more general ERP. So that's where we're seeing them coming in. I think we're vetting them right now in a food process or batch manufacturing environment. We'll see how they do there, but so far so good. So, and again, good people to work with. And it is interesting to note the Sweden sort of origins, because if you look at the two solutions that Microsoft, I know we're going to talk about them at another time very soon. But the two solutions that are the go forward products for Microsoft are also from Scandinavia, interestingly enough.
Right.
So, you look at Germany, you can't not look at Germany, and then you think about the Scandinavia kind of influence on software. I mean, there's tons of software written in North America also, of course. But anyway, I just think it's interesting that IFS really has sort of kind of, they've broadened out across the world, but again, I think we're going to see them more in North America. We already are, especially with some of the partners that are really taking responsibility for the product and getting it out of non-existence with the market.
Right. Well, can you talk to us a little bit? Do you know about their pricing structure?
It's pretty straightforward from what we've seen. So if you think about a typical project, usually, we will put together sort of like an RFI, right? And we sort of say, okay, here's the customer's requirements, the business requirements, and then here's the number of users that the customer has in these different areas. Pretty basic, right? So without getting into all the details that we can't because it is confidential, but if you look at IFS model, it definitely sort of reflects that kind of here's sort of the subscription cost based on the modules that you're going to need. And based based off the users,
Mhm.
here's a term that we can do. They're very willing to work and be flexible with a little bit longer term, which is good. Our customers, the heavy asset intensive industries, they're kind of risk adverse for technology. They spend a ton of money on, autonomous mining trucks cruising around in Africa and wherever, they spend a ton and tons and tons of money on batch process machines that are mixers and heaters and condensers and all that stuff. But when it comes to enterprise software, they're not as aggressive. They're a little more risk adverse there. So we like that IFS is willing to do, good long-term contracts with our customers so that when they get into the solution, we can lock in the pricing for that. So
That's right. Not be surprised later on down the road, right?
That's exactly right. Yep. So pricing is pretty common. And again, on those good contracts, I think things are good there. Implementation wise, the rates are very fair, very competitive with everybody else. So, it's their competitive pricing for sure. They do kind of tend towards, I would say more the tier 2, upper end of the tier 2 pricing, in terms of recurring costs without getting into too many specifics. So you're going to want to have a business that's bigger, right? That has more ROI that they're going to get from the software because they can automate more processes and, streamline things and save people a lot of time. But again, very, very competitive pricing for sure.
Okay. Well, Sean, thanks so much for sharing what you know about IFS, and maybe we'll circle back too once you've had a little more experience with them, and we can learn more about them later down the road.
Yep, that sounds great.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. Continue to be on the lookout for our multi-part series this summer that will help advance your ERP knowledge and allow you to take advantage of over a century of combined ERP experience from our expert consultants here at EAG. Thank you again for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This summer, ERP Advisors Group will be reviewing the most prominent ERP software vendors in the market. For more information about these vendors, please visit our website at erpadvisorsgroup.com. You can also find more EAG content by following us on social media or by subscribing to our podcast, The ERP Advisor.